I'm Seraphina Walsh, 28, and I thought I knew my family. Until last Sunday's dinner when my sister Vivian poured ice water over my head screaming, "You have 10 minutes to pack and leave my life forever." The entire family just watched. What I discovered in those 10 minutes changed everything I believed about blood loyalty, exposed a web of lies spanning 15 years, and set in motion a chain of events that would destroy the very foundation my family was built on. Sometimes karma needs a little push. Before we dive into this wild family drama, let me ask, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, and if you're ready for a story that'll make you question everything about family loyalty, smash that like button and subscribe, because this revenge tale has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply letting the truth do the talking. Now, let's get into how my perfect family dinner became a complete nightmare. Growing up as the youngest Walsh daughter in suburban Connecticut, I always believed we were the picture-perfect American family. My parents, Robert and Margaret Walsh, had built their real estate empire from nothing, creating a legacy that defined our small town's elite social circle. My older sister Vivian, 32, was everything I aspired to be. Successful, confident, and seemingly untouchable as the golden child who could do no wrong. Our family dinners were legendary in our social circle. Every Sunday at 6 p.m. sharp, we'd gather around the mahogany dining table that had been in our family for 3 generations. Mom would spend hours preparing elaborate meals, and Dad would regale us with stories from his latest property deals. Vivian would update us on her marketing firm's latest clients, while I shared my modest achievements as a freelance graphic designer. The Walsh family dynamic seemed enviable to outsiders. We lived in the sprawling colonial house on Maple Street, complete with perfectly manicured gardens and a 3-car garage housing Dad's BMW, Mom's Mercedes, and Vivian's Audi. I was the only one still driving a modest Honda Civic, but nobody ever made me feel lesser for it. At least not until that fateful Sunday. What I didn't realize was how carefully orchestrated these family gatherings were. Every conversation topic, every shared laugh, every moment of apparent closeness was part of an elaborate performance. Vivian had mastered the art of playing the devoted sister, always asking about my work, my love life, and my future plans with what seemed like genuine interest. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Vivian's eyes would narrow whenever I mentioned a new client or a successful project. How she'd quickly change the subject whenever I talked about my relationship with Marcus, my boyfriend of 2 years. The subtle comments about my simple lifestyle that I dismissed as typical big sister teasing. The truth was, I idolized Vivienne. She had everything I thought I wanted: a corner office in Manhattan, designer clothes, a penthouse apartment, and a seemingly endless parade of successful boyfriends. I spent years trying to earn her approval, sending her my best design work for feedback, asking for career advice, and genuinely believing she wanted the best for me. Our parents seemed oblivious to any tension. Mom was always busy with her charity committees and garden club meetings, while Dad was consumed with expanding the family business. They saw what they wanted to see: 2 successful daughters who got along beautifully. The perfect family narrative was so important to them that they ignored any evidence to the contrary. I remember countless times when Vivian would make cutting remarks disguised as helpful suggestions. "Maybe you should consider a more stable career, Sarah," she'd say with a concerned expression. "Freelancing is so unpredictable." Or, "That dress is cute, but have you considered something more sophisticated for family events?" Her criticism always came wrapped in concern, making it impossible to call out without seeming ungrateful or oversensitive. The financial dynamics in our family were complex. Dad had always been generous, with both of us paying for our educations and helping us get started in our careers. He'd given Vivian the capital to start her marketing firm, and he'd helped me purchase my small studio apartment. I thought we were both equally loved and supported. What I didn't know was that Vivian had been receiving significantly more financial assistance than me. While I scraped together rent payments and client invoices, she was being quietly subsidized by our parents to maintain her luxurious lifestyle. The successful marketing firm she boasted about was largely funded by Dad's real estate profits, something she conveniently forgot to mention during our family dinners. The social aspect of our family life was equally complex. We were regulars at the country club, attended all the right charity galas, and maintained friendships with the town's most influential families. Vivian thrived in this environment, networking effortlessly and building connections that served her business interests. I always felt slightly out of place but assumed it was just my more introverted nature. Our extended family gatherings followed the same pattern. Cousins, aunts, and uncles would shower Vivian with praise for her achievements while treating me with polite but dismissive kindness. I was the artistic one, the free spirit who was still finding her way. These labels felt harmless at the time, but they were systematically diminishing my worth in the family hierarchy. The most painful part was how genuine my love for them all felt. I would spend weeks preparing thoughtful gifts for birthdays and holidays, creating custom designs for family occasions, and going out of my way to be supportive during difficult times. When Vivian went through her messy breakup with her ex-fiancé 3 years ago, I was the one who brought her tissues, ice cream, and stayed up all night listening to her cry. Marcus often pointed out things that bothered him about my family dynamics, but I always defended them. "They're just concerned about my future," I'd explain. "Vivienne wants me to be successful like her." He'd give me that look, the one that said he saw things I couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. But I was so desperate to belong, so committed to maintaining the family harmony, that I dismissed his observations as outsider misunderstanding. The irony is that I thought I was the lucky one. While Vivian dealt with the pressure of being the high achiever, I felt free to pursue my creative passions without expectations. I believed my parents loved me for who I was, not for what I accomplished. I thought Vivian and I had the kind of sisterly bond that would last forever, built on shared memories and unconditional support. That Sunday dinner started like countless others before it. Mom had prepared her famous pot roast. Dad was in an excellent mood after closing a major commercial deal, and Vivian seemed particularly animated as she described her firm's latest marketing campaign. I had exciting news to share. My biggest client yet had just signed a 6-month contract, and I was finally feeling financially stable. I should have known something was different when Vivian kept checking her phone throughout dinner, her smile becoming more forced with each passing minute. But I was too excited about my own news, too caught up in the warm family atmosphere, to notice the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. The dinner conversation had been flowing normally until I mentioned my new client. "You guys, I have amazing news," I said, unable to contain my excitement any longer. "Remember that tech startup I've been pitching to for months? They finally signed with me for a complete rebrand. Logo, website, marketing materials, everything. It's a 6-month contract worth more than I usually make in a year." Dad's face lit up immediately. "Sarah, that's fantastic. What's the company called?" I could see the genuine pride in his eyes, the same look he used to give Vivienne when she announced her business successes. "Innovate Tech Solutions," I replied, practically glowing. "They're developing revolutionary software for small businesses, and they want a fresh, modern brand identity." The CEO said my portfolio was exactly what they were looking for: authentic, creative, and professional. The moment I said the company name, something shifted in Vivian's expression. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth, and her face went pale. Mom noticed immediately. "Vivian, honey, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Innovate Tech Solutions." Vivian's voice came out as barely a whisper. "You said Innovate Tech Solutions." "Yes, why do you know them?" I was puzzled by her reaction but still buzzing with excitement about my breakthrough contract. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. Vivian's chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor as she stood up abruptly. Her water glass trembled in her hand, and for a moment I thought she might be having some kind of medical emergency. Dad started to ask if she needed help, but before anyone could react, Vivian lifted the glass high above her head. You conniving little bitch, she snarled, her voice filled with venom I'd never heard before. The ice water came crashing down on my head, soaking through my hair and dripping onto the cream-colored blouse I'd worn specifically because Mom always complimented me in light colors. The shock was so complete that I couldn't even scream. 10 minutes, Vivian continued, her voice rising to a shriek that seemed to echo off the dining room walls. You have exactly 10 minutes to pack your shit and leave my life forever. And if I ever see your backstabbing face again, I'll destroy you completely. The silence that followed was deafening. Water dripped from my hair onto Mom's pristine tablecloth while I sat frozen in shock. Dad's mouth hung open and Mom's hand covered her heart like she was having chest pains. The warm family atmosphere had evaporated, instantly replaced by a tension so thick I could barely breathe. Vivian Walsh, Dad's voice boomed across the dining room. What in God's name has gotten into you? Apologize to your sister this instant. But Vivian wasn't done. Apologize to her. She laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. Do you want to know what your precious little Seraphina did? Do you want to know what kind of person you've been coddling all these years? I found my voice finally, though it came out shaky and confused. Viv, what are you talking about? What did I do? I don't understand what's happening. Don't you dare call me Viv, she spat. Don't you dare act innocent. Innovate Tech Solutions was my client, Seraphina. My client. I've been working with them for 8 months developing their entire marketing strategy. And somehow, mysteriously, they decided to drop my firm and hire some nobody freelancer instead. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible, I stammered. They contacted me directly through my website portfolio. I never even knew you were working with them. Liar, Vivian's voice cracked with fury. You knew exactly what you were doing. You probably stalked their executives on LinkedIn, figured out who they were meeting with, and then deliberately undercut my proposals. That's the only way some amateur could steal a client from an established firm. Dad tried to intervene again. Now hold on, there has to be a reasonable explanation. The explanation, Vivian interrupted, is that I've been supporting a snake in this family for 28 years. Someone who smiles to my face while sabotaging everything I've worked for behind my back. Mom finally found her voice, though it was barely above a whisper. Vivian, sweetheart, maybe there's been a misunderstanding. Companies change their minds about vendors all the time. It doesn't mean Seraphina did anything wrong. A misunderstanding. Vivian's laugh was becoming more unhinged by the second. Mom, wake up, your golden child isn't some innocent victim. She's a calculating opportunist who's been playing all of you for fools. How do you think she got this contract? By coincidence, by merit, please? I was still sitting there dripping, trying to process what was happening. The family dinner that had started with such joy and excitement had turned into a nightmare. Vivian, I swear on everything I hold dear, I had no idea you were working with them. I would never deliberately steal your client. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything from you, she replied coldly. I've seen your true colors now. All those years of playing the supportive little sister, asking for my advice, pretending to look up to me. It was all an act, wasn't it? You were just gathering intelligence, learning about my business, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. The accusations were so far from my reality that I felt like I was in some kind of alternate universe. This wasn't the sister who had taught me to ride a bike, who had helped me with my college applications, who had held me when our grandmother died. This was a stranger wearing Vivian's face, saying things that made no sense. You're talking crazy, I said, my own anger finally starting to surface. I love you, Viv. I would never do anything to hurt you or your business. Something else is going on here, something we need to figure out together. Together, the word came out like poison. There is no together anymore, Seraphina. There's me and there's you, and now there's war between us. And trust me, little sister, you have no idea who you're dealing with. That's when I knew something fundamental had broken that couldn't be fixed with explanations or apologies. The look in Vivian's eyes wasn't just anger. It was pure hatred, years of resentment finally erupting to the surface. And somehow I was the target of all that poison. With my hair still dripping and my family staring at me like I was a stranger, I knew I had to get out of that dining room. The tension was suffocating and Vivian's rage showed no signs of cooling down. "Fine," I said, standing up with as much dignity as I could muster. "I'll go pack, but this conversation isn't over, and someday you'll realize how wrong you are about me." I headed upstairs to my childhood bedroom, which my parents had kept exactly as I'd left it when I moved out 6 years ago. The familiar pink walls and white furniture felt like a sanctuary after the chaos downstairs, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely think straight. 10 minutes to pack. What did that even mean? Was Vivian really expecting me to cut all contact with my family forever over a business misunderstanding? As I threw some clothes into my old college duffel bag, my mind raced through every interaction I'd had with Innovate Tech Solutions. Their CEO David Chen had contacted me directly through my website after seeing my portfolio online. We'd had 3 meetings at coffee shops, and he'd never once mentioned working with another marketing firm. Either he was lying or there was something Vivian wasn't telling me. That's when I remembered the contract email chain on my phone. Maybe there was something in David's messages that could shed light on this nightmare. As I scrolled through our correspondence, one particular email caught my attention. It was from 3 weeks ago when David had officially offered me the project Seraphina. After much consideration and some internal restructuring, we've decided to move forward with your proposal. We were previously working with Walsh Marketing Solutions, but there were some concerns about transparency and billing practices that made us uncomfortable continuing that relationship. Your fresh perspective and honest approach is exactly what we need for this rebrand. My blood ran cold. Walsh Marketing Solutions. That was Vivian's company. But David was saying they'd dropped her because of concerns about transparency and billing, not because I had somehow stolen the client. I screenshot the email quickly, knowing I'd need proof of what really happened. But there was more. As I continued reading, I found David's response to a question I'd asked about their previous branding attempts. To be honest, we felt misled by our previous marketing firm. They promised results they couldn't deliver, and charged us for services we later discovered were never actually performed. The final straw was when we found out they were billing us for a full design team when it was actually just one person doing all the work. "We appreciate your upfront pricing and clear timeline. It's refreshing after what we went through." My heart was pounding as the implications sank in. Vivian hadn't lost the client because of anything I'd done. She'd lost them because of her own business practices. But instead of taking responsibility, she was blaming me for her failures. The injustice of it made me feel sick. I was about to head back downstairs when I heard raised voices from below. Creeping to the top of the staircase, I could hear my parents arguing with Vivian in hushed but intense tones. "Completely unacceptable behavior," Dad was saying. "I don't care how upset you are about losing a client. You don't attack your sister like that. You don't understand." Vivian's voice was strained. "This isn't just about one client. Seraphina has been undermining me for years. She acts all sweet and supportive, but she's been sabotaging my business from the inside." "That's ridiculous," Mom interjected. "Sarah loves you. She's always looked up to you. Why would she want to hurt your business?" "Because she's jealous," Vivian exploded. "She's always been jealous of my success, my lifestyle, everything I've built. And now she's found a way to tear it all down." There was a pause, and then Dad's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. "Vivian, I need you to think very carefully about what you're saying. Are you absolutely certain that Seraphina deliberately stole your client?" "I don't need to be certain," Vivian replied. "I know my sister better than anyone, and I know she's capable of this." That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. Vivian wasn't just wrong about what happened, she genuinely believed her own accusations. In her mind, I was guilty of betraying her, and nothing I could say would change that. But why? What had I ever done to make her think so poorly of me? I was still processing this revelation when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom appeared at the top looking exhausted and heartbroken. "Sarah, honey, are you almost ready? Your father and I think it might be best if you stayed somewhere else tonight just until everyone calms down." "Mom, I need to show you something," I said, pulling out my phone. "Look at this email from my client. They didn't drop Vivienne because of me. They dropped her because of problems with her business practices." Mom read the emails, her expression growing more troubled with each line. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "this changes everything. Vivienne told us you had somehow convinced them to drop her firm, but this says something completely different. I would never do that to her, Mom, never. I don't understand why she thinks I'm capable of something so awful." Mom sat down heavily on my old bed, suddenly looking every one of her 58 years. "There are things about your sister that you don't know, Sarah. Things your father and I probably should have addressed years ago." "Hold up, I can see some of you in the comments are already picking sides, and I get it. Family drama hits different, because we've all been there, right? Whether you're Team Sarah or wondering if there's more to this story, stick with me because what Mom's about to reveal will change everything you think you know about family loyalty. The next part is where this whole perfect family facade comes crashing down, and trust me, you won't see it coming." "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Mom was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "Your sister has always struggled with jealousy. Even as children, she had difficulty when you achieved things or received attention. We thought she'd outgrow it, but it seems to have gotten worse as you've both become adults." The words hit me like a revelation. All those years of subtle criticism, the dismissive comments about my career, the way she'd changed the subject when I shared good news, it hadn't been big sister concern. It had been jealousy, pure and simple. "But she's so successful," I protested. "She has everything I could ever want. Why would she be jealous of me?" Mom's expression grew even more pained. "Success doesn't always cure insecurity, honey. Sometimes it makes it worse. Vivienne has built her entire identity around being the successful one, the achiever, the daughter who made it big. When you started doing well with your own business, it threatened that identity." The 10 minutes Vivienne had given me were almost up, but I felt like I was just beginning to understand my own family. How had I missed something so fundamental about my sister's personality? How had our parents let it go on for so long without intervention? As I zipped up my bag, I realized that leaving might actually be the best thing for everyone involved. I needed space to process what I'd learned, and clearly Vivienne needed time to deal with her own issues, but this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent that night at Marcus's apartment replaying every family interaction through this new lens of understanding. My boyfriend had been incredibly patient, listening to my tearful recounting of the dinner disaster while holding me as I processed the betrayal. But Marcus, being a financial analyst with a sharp eye for inconsistencies, started asking questions that I hadn't thought to ask myself. "Sarah, think about this logically," he said as we sat on his couch with coffee the next morning. "If Vivienne really believed you stole her client, wouldn't she have some kind of evidence? Screenshots of you contacting her clients, documentation of you undercutting her prices." She made these accusations without presenting any proof. He was right. Vivienne had accused me of deliberate sabotage but hadn't offered a single piece of evidence to support her claims. Her entire argument was based on the assumption that I was capable of such betrayal, which said more about her perception of me than about my actual actions. I keep thinking about what my mom said I told him. About Vivienne struggling with jealousy. But Marcus, what if there's more to this story? What if the client situation is just the tip of the iceberg? That afternoon I decided to do some investigating of my own. I called David Chen directly, hoping to get more clarity about what had really happened between him and Vivienne's firm. David was surprisingly forthcoming about the situation. "I'm sorry your family is dealing with conflict over this," he said. But I want you to know that your sister's firm had serious problems that had nothing to do with you. The billing irregularities were just the beginning. We discovered they were claiming to have capabilities they didn't actually possess. What kind of capabilities, I asked, though I was beginning to dread the answer. They told us they had a team of 12 designers and marketers working on our account. When we requested a team meeting, we found out it was essentially just your sister doing everything herself and outsourcing some work to freelancers at much lower rates than what they were charging us. It felt like fraud. My heart sank. This wasn't just about jealousy or sibling rivalry anymore. If what David was telling me was true, Vivian had been running her business in a fundamentally dishonest way. No wonder she was so defensive about losing the client. She was probably terrified they'd expose her practices to other potential clients. David, can I ask how you found my portfolio? You said you contacted me directly, but I'm trying to understand how you knew about my work. Actually, that's interesting, he replied. We found you through a recommendation from another business owner who'd worked with you, Jennifer Martinez from Coastal Consulting. She said you were talented, reliable, and completely ethical, everything we were looking for after our bad experience. I knew Jennifer well. She'd been one of my first major clients 2 years ago, and we'd maintained a great professional relationship. She'd referred several clients to me over the years, but I'd never thought to ask how she described my work to others. The fact that she specifically mentioned my ethics made me wonder if word had gotten around about Vivian's business practices. Curiosity getting the better of me, I called Jennifer next. Her reaction to my questions was immediate and telling. Oh, Sarah, please tell me you're not getting mixed up in whatever's going on with your sister's company, she said with genuine concern in her voice. There's been talk in the business community about Walsh marketing for months. Nothing official, but enough whispers to make people cautious. What kind of talk, I asked, though I was beginning to piece together the picture. Overcharging, claiming capabilities they don't have, taking credit for work done by freelancers, that sort of thing. When David asked me for recommendations, I thought of you immediately, because I knew you'd be completely transparent about your process and pricing. The conversation with Jennifer lasted nearly an hour, and by the end I had a much clearer picture of what was really happening. Vivian's business was in trouble not because of anything I'd done but because of her own questionable practices. She was losing clients, her reputation was suffering, and instead of taking responsibility, she'd decided to make me the scapegoat. That evening I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront Vivian directly, armed with the truth about what really happened with Innovate Tech and what I'd learned about her business practices. But I wasn't going to do it alone. I asked Marcus to come with me for moral support, and I also asked my parents to be present. Whatever was going to happen, it needed to happen in front of witnesses. I called Dad and asked if we could have a family meeting at their house. I could hear the relief in his voice when I agreed to come back. Your mother and I have been worried sick, he said. Vivian has been difficult since you left. She's convinced you're going to try to ruin her business somehow. Dad, I need you and Mom to hear some things about Vivian's business that might be hard to accept. And I need Vivian to be there too, because it's time we all started being honest with each other. When we arrived at my parents' house that evening, the atmosphere was tense but not hostile like it had been the night before. Vivian was sitting in the living room looking composed but wary. She'd clearly been expecting this confrontation. I talked to David Chen today, I said without preamble, sitting across from her. He told me exactly why they dropped your company, and it had nothing to do with me. Vivian's composure cracked slightly. I suppose you're going to believe some client who was looking for an excuse to get out of paying for quality work. He told me about the team you claimed to have but didn't actually employ. About the billing for services you never provided. About the capabilities you promised but couldn't deliver. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was trembling. Viv, you've been running your business dishonestly, and when it caught up with you, you blamed me instead of taking responsibility. The silence in the room was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged glances that told me they were putting pieces together that they'd probably suspected but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Vivian's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "You don't understand the pressure," she said quietly. "Everyone expects me to be successful, to be the perfect daughter with the perfect business. Sometimes you have to exaggerate a little to get clients to take you seriously." That's when I realized we'd crossed a line from family drama into something much more serious. Vivian's admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. My parents sat frozen, processing the reality that their golden daughter had just confessed to business fraud. But I wasn't done yet. I had more questions that needed answers, and for the first time in my life, Vivian was in a position where she couldn't deflect or manipulate her way out of the truth. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. The false billing, the fake team members, the exaggerated capabilities. Vivian's defiance was crumbling by the minute. "It started small," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just padding the hours a little here and there. But clients wanted bigger firms, more resources than I could provide alone. So I started telling them I had a full team." Dad leaned forward, his business instincts kicking in despite his emotional turmoil. "Vivian, do you understand what you're admitting to? This isn't just poor business practices, this could be considered fraud. You could face legal consequences." "Legal consequences?" Mom gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Vivian, sweetheart, how bad is this situation?" That's when the full scope of the disaster became clear. Vivian broke down, completely sobbing as she confessed to years of increasingly elaborate lies. She'd been using our father's business connections to legitimize her own company, telling clients she had partnerships and resources that didn't exist. She'd been billing for work done by freelancers at a fraction of her quoted rates, pocketing the difference. Most damaging of all, she'd been forging invoices and documentation to support her false claims. "The worst part," she choked out between sobs, "is that I convinced myself I was protecting the family reputation. I thought if I could just make the business successful enough, it would justify the methods. But it kept getting harder to maintain the lies, and I kept needing to go further to cover up the previous deceptions." Marcus, who had been quietly observing, asked the question I hadn't thought to ask. "Vivian, how many clients have you defrauded, and how much money are we talking about?" The answer was staggering. Over the past 3 years, Vivian had overcharged clients by an estimated $200,000 through various fraudulent practices. She had active contracts with 8 companies, all based on false representations of her firm's capabilities. Innovate Tech dropping her wasn't an isolated incident. It was the beginning of what could become a cascade of legal and financial disasters. "Oh my God," Mom whispered. "Vivian, how could you let it get this bad? Why didn't you ask for help?" But I was starting to understand something deeper about my sister's psychology. "You couldn't ask for help," I said, looking directly at Vivian, "because that would mean admitting you weren't the perfect success story everyone thought you were. You'd rather commit fraud than let anyone see you struggle." Vivian's tears turned to angry sobs. "You don't understand the pressure. Everyone always expected me to be the successful one, the one who had it all figured out. You got to be the free spirit, the artist who could take her time finding her way. But I had to be perfect from day one." "That's not fair," I said, my own anger finally surfacing. "Nobody forced you to lie and cheat, and nobody forced you to make me the villain when your house of cards started falling down." Dad stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This explains so much," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The expensive lifestyle, the constant need for more investment in the business, the reluctance to let us meet your team or visit your office. You've been living a lie for years." "Robert," Mom said sharply, "she's still our daughter. We need to figure out how to help her through this." But helping Vivian was going to be complicated. As the full scope of her fraudulent practices became clear, it was obvious that she was potentially facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and financial ruin. The family's reputation would inevitably be damaged, and Dad's real estate business could suffer by association. There's something else, Vivian said, her voice so quiet we had to strain to hear her. I've been using the family name and connections to gain clients' trust. Some of them specifically chose my firm because they knew about Dad's success in real estate. If this gets out, it could hurt your business too. The room fell silent as we all processed the implications. Vivian hadn't just jeopardized her own future, she'd potentially damaged our father's decades-long reputation and business relationships. The perfect family facade hadn't just cracked, it had shattered completely, revealing years of deception and manipulation. We need lawyers, Marcus said practically. Both criminal defense attorneys and business lawyers. This situation is beyond what the family can handle alone. And you need to start making a list of every client you've defrauded, I added, looking at Vivian. Because you're going to have to come clean to all of them before they discover the truth on their own. Vivian looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, genuine remorse mixed with terror. Sarah, I know you have no reason to help me after what I did to you, but I'm begging you, please don't abandon me. I know I've been awful, but I need my family now more than ever. The irony wasn't lost on me. Less than 24 hours ago, Vivian had demanded that I leave her life forever. Now she was pleading for my support as her world collapsed around her. Part of me wanted to walk away and let her face the consequences of her actions alone. But despite everything she'd done, she was still my sister. I'll help you, I said finally. But only if you agree to tell the complete truth from now on. No more lies, no more deception, no more blaming other people for your choices. If we're going to get through this as a family, it has to be based on honesty. As we began planning how to address the legal and financial disasters ahead, I realized that this crisis might actually be the best thing that could have happened to our family. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were going to have to deal with each other as we really were, not as the perfect characters we'd been pretending to be. The next 6 months were the most challenging period our family had ever faced, but they were also the most transformative. Vivian's decision to come clean about her fraudulent business practices triggered a cascade of legal and financial consequences that forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our family dynamics. With the help of experienced attorneys, Vivian negotiated plea agreements with the 8 clients she had defrauded. She agreed to full restitution, paid partially through liquidating her assets and partially through a payment plan that would take her years to complete. Her luxury apartment, designer wardrobe, and expensive car were all sold to help pay back what she owed. The state attorney's office agreed to probation instead of jail time, provided she completed community service and ongoing counseling. The transformation in Vivian was remarkable. Stripped of her artificial success and forced to face the consequences of her actions, she became more genuine than I'd ever seen her. She moved back in with our parents temporarily and took a regular marketing job at a small local firm, earning a fraction of what she'd claimed to make with her own company. But for the first time in years, she seemed genuinely at peace. I forgot what it felt like to sleep through the night, she told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings, a new tradition we'd started as part of rebuilding our relationship. When you're living a lie, you're constantly terrified that someone will figure it out. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying until it was gone. The impact on our parents was significant as well. Dad's business did suffer some damage to its reputation, and he lost a few clients who were concerned about being associated with the Walsh family scandal. But he handled it with a grace and integrity that reminded me why I'd always looked up to him. He was completely transparent with his remaining clients about Vivian's situation and his own lack of knowledge about her practices. The hardest part, Dad told me privately, is realizing that I failed as a parent somewhere along the way. I was so focused on celebrating Vivian's apparent success that I never asked the hard questions. I let her feel like she had to be perfect instead of teaching her that it was okay to struggle and ask for help. Mom underwent her own transformation during this period. She'd always been the family peacekeeper, smoothing over conflicts and maintaining the appearance of harmony even when problems festered beneath the surface. But Vivian's crisis forced her to develop more direct communication skills and to stop enabling destructive behavior in the name of family loyalty. I spent so many years protecting both of you girls from consequences, she admitted during one of our family therapy sessions. I thought I was being loving, but I was actually preventing you from learning how to deal with failure and setbacks. Vivian never learned that it was okay to not be perfect because I always rushed in to fix things for her. The family therapy sessions were initially awkward and painful, but they became the foundation for rebuilding our relationships on a more honest basis. Dr. Sarah Chen, our therapist, helped us understand the toxic dynamics that had developed over the years and gave us tools for communicating more effectively. One of the most powerful moments came when Vivian directly apologized for her behavior toward me. Sarah, I need you to understand that my accusations about you stealing my client weren't really about you at all, she said during a particularly emotional session. I was terrified that my business was failing, and I couldn't handle taking responsibility for that failure. It was easier to believe that someone else was sabotaging me than to admit that I had sabotaged myself. What hurt the most, I replied, wasn't just the accusation but the fact that you thought I was capable of deliberately hurting you. It made me realize that you didn't really know me at all, despite being sisters for 28 years. You're right, she said, tears streaming down her face. I was so wrapped up in my own insecurities and jealousy that I never really saw you as a person. I saw you as either a threat or an audience, but never as my sister who loved me and wanted the best for me. Meanwhile, my own life was thriving in ways I'd never expected. The Innovate Tech contract led to several other high-profile clients, and my business grew rapidly. More importantly, the experience of standing up to family pressure and maintaining my integrity even when it was difficult gave me a new sense of confidence and self-worth. Marcus proposed 6 months after the family crisis began, joking that if our relationship could survive that level of drama, it could survive anything. We're planning a small intimate wedding next spring, and for the first time I'm excited about having my whole family there to celebrate with us. The most surprising development was how the crisis ultimately brought our family closer together. Forced to deal with each other honestly, we discovered depths of love and resilience we hadn't known existed. Vivian and I now have the kind of sisterly relationship I'd always wanted, one based on genuine mutual respect and support rather than competition and jealousy. Vivian has become one of my biggest advocates, referring potential clients to me and genuinely celebrating my successes. I wasted so many years being jealous of you, she told me recently, when I should have been proud to have such a talented and ethical sister. The community service component of Vivian's sentence turned into an unexpected passion. She's been working with a nonprofit that helps small business owners develop ethical marketing practices using her own experience as a cautionary tale. I can't undo the damage I caused, she says, but I can use my story to prevent other people from making the same mistakes. Looking back on this whole crazy journey, I have to ask you guys something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone you loved accused you of something you didn't do? How did you handle it? Drop your stories in the comments because I'd love to hear how you dealt with family betrayal and whether justice eventually found its way to your situation too. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Share this with anyone who's dealing with toxic family dynamics. Sometimes we all need to see that it's possible to come out stronger on the other side. Thank you for going on this emotional roller coaster with me, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply living your truth and letting karma do the rest. Here's to family bonds that are rebuilt on honesty rather than perfection. They're so much stronger in the end.